What's going on, everyone? This is Ryan, and I'm here with Ian, straight out of Boston. We're doing episode number 2 of our season preview podcast. Up today is the AL Central, so we're going to be talking about all the new additions and whatnot, and the AL Central will be discussing them. So, right off the bat, we're going to be talking about the World Series runners-up, the Detroit Tigers. So, you want to talk about them?
Yeah, sure. So the Tigers this offseason did some pretty substantial moves. They lost Delman Young just because Victor Martinez coming back from injury. He'll probably DH, so they really didn't have a need for Delman Young. But to make up for that loss, they signed Torrey Hunter, who was I wasn't expecting that to be such a big signing, but I think it turned out to be pretty good for them. So like I mentioned before, Martinez comes back from injury. They also lost Jose Valverde. So not too many moves from the Tigers this offseason that really stood pat with their core after finishing, after getting swept by the Giants in the Giants in the World Series. They they think that they have a team that can certainly make a run. And what do you think about them?
Well, I think they pretty much have the same team from last year. They have that big core where they got Drunk Miggy and Fielder. And they pretty much have the same starters again. They have their rotation goes Verlander, Scherzer, Sanchez,
Porcello,
Drew Smiley.
Yeah, I guess. Or Fister.
Doug Fister's in there. So Smiley and Porcello are gonna battle for the fifth spot, but the starting rotation looks pretty solid. I mean, you got a superstar in Verlander, and then you got some really, really good guys after him. So they could definitely make a run at the World Series crown again, and I don't know. I mean, this is a really weak division, so they're gonna have a nice padded record. I mean, last year they should have been a lot better than what they really seemed like. They finally got hot in that in like the last 2 weeks and finally took over the division. So.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a team that, like I said before, they stood pat with their core. They really think that they have a team that can definitely make another run of the World Series. They have an incredible team on paper. If you think about 2 through 5 or whatever, it's going to consist of Fielder, Hunter, Cabrera, and Martinez with Austin Jackson at the top of the lineup. I think that if we're thinking mid-July where they're going to be at as a team, I think that they could certainly improve on the bottom half of their lineup as well as the back end of their bullpen. Definitely their bullpen is probably the biggest weakness at this point. But like you said, they're playing in a very weak division this year, and I think that they're going to be the team that a lot of people thought they were going to be last year, really running away with this division. So.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't understand why they have to lose Valverde. Like, I understand that he had a terrible, terrible postseason, but still, he's been their established closer for the past 3 years, something like that. So, yeah. I mean, even though he had a bad postseason, I mean, I really don't understand why you'd lose him. It kind of reminds me of who's a closer that just recently had this happen to him.
Brian Wilson, maybe.
Brian Wilson, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been really good. He's probably been a little bit overrated just because of his beard, but. I mean, honestly, that's why you talk about Brian Wilson, because of his beard.
Yeah.
But, I mean, whatever. That's their decision. But I think their closer now is going to be Phil Koch.
Yeah, that's something I think they definitely need to fix or something at the trade deadline. This isn't a very strong farm system, so I don't know who they're going to be able to give up in terms of trying to get like an elite ninth inning.
The only one worth giving up would be Castellanos. But.
Yeah, which would be interesting because they don't. I mean, I don't know where Castellanos is going to play when he comes up. I think they're trying to move him to a corner outfield position.
Yeah, they're trying to move him to the outfield. So.
Yeah, because they can't play him at third, they can't play him at first. So
they could put him at shortstop. They still have Johnny Peralta, right?
Yeah, Peralta's there, and he's kind of another situation where they might need to assure the back end of their lineup, just because Avila and Peralta and maybe whoever their left fielder is going to be, probably. I don't know. I can't think of who it's going to be, but yeah.
So, all right, let's go to our predictions. So you can go first.
All right, so I have the Tigers going 95-67 this year. Like I said before, I think they're going to turn out to be the team that everyone thought they were going to be last year. Upper 90s, maybe even get triple digits in wins. What do you think?
I have them slated at 93-69.
All right.
I think that they have they really need to improve on the bottom of that lineup still. I mean, like they do have like a really, really two big offensive threats in Cabrera and Fielder. Just the bullpen, the bottom of the lineup are a little bit of a concern for me. But I mean, again, they could probably get way higher than that because of this weak division.
Yeah, I think that You have a couple of innings eaters in Verlander, and Scherzer can consistently go 7 or 8 innings a game, and even Fister's been known to eat up a bunch of innings sometimes. So I think that hopefully those guys can keep the bullpen rested and make that weakness not as much of a weakness as it is. So I think and like I said, I think they'll make a move at the deadline at some point, and just really shore up that team. I think it's a very good all-around team.
Yeah, and I think the only really reason that they would struggle in this division would be if they had a significant injury to Verlander or one of their starters.
Yeah.
That'd be the only way that they could possibly lose this division. So.
Yep.
All right, so that's the Tigers. So we're gonna talk about the White Sox next. So. The White Sox this offseason, they lost Kevin Youkilis, the third baseman. They lost Francisco Liriano. Re-signed and overpaid Jake Peavy and Gavin Floyd. Signed Matt Lindstrom. Lost A.J. Przinsky. Signed Jeff Keppinger. Lost Brett Myers. And that's pretty much it for their offseason. So you can go first on them.
The White Sox were a team last year that surprised a lot of teams. Really competing for that AL Central crown and holding the lead for a while, really up until the last few weeks of September and into October, of course, which then the Tigers ended up winning it. But I really like the White Sox this year. They didn't really improve the team too much. They didn't really make it any worse. I think that obviously this is a team kind of like the Baltimore Orioles, who we talked about last week. They really overachieved last year. I don't think they'll have as much success as they had. I think they won, what was it? Let me check right here. 85 games last year. So they were a solid team. They lost, I think, maybe their only all-star in A.J. Przinsky. Kevin Youkilis was decent for them. He hit 246, and I believe at 14 home runs as a White Sox. Francisco Liriano was a guy they acquired at the deadline. He was okay for them. He really wasn't what they needed, though. And then, like you said, I should say, they re-signed Peavy and Floyd to kind of shore up the top half of that rotation. So this is a team that didn't do too much. I think that Robin Ventura is a very good manager. I think that he's the type of manager that doesn't need too much talent. He can kind of get guys to fill in the roles and play team baseball. So I really like this team this year. What do you think about them?
With the White Sox, I don't like them at all. And that's just because I don't see much offense in them. I mean, they have they have Adam Dunn, who can either do really well with the home runs or he can strike out all season. And their pitcher rotation. I mean, you have washed up Jake Peavy. You have Chris Sale, who can compete for that Cy Young. I think that he might get the Cy Young this year. Honestly,
yeah, he's really good.
I think Chris Sale is that good of a pitcher. And their bullpen, they have a few strong points, but I mean that's still not that great as well. And I mean, just their offense overall, it's just not that doesn't really seem like a really big run producer. So. I'm trying to think of some important people on their offense, but I really can't think of anyone on the White Sox right now.
I'm thinking Konerko. Dunn hits a lot of home runs, even though he strikes out a lot. Alex Rios. I don't know who's going to play catcher for them this year. Maybe Tyler Flowers, but I'm not really too sure about that.
So I mean, there's not really much that you can really think of about them right now.
Yeah, but I think Sale, Peavy, and Floyd. Peavy and Floyd have been inconsistent throughout their careers, but they had good years last year. I think if they can continue their success. Like I said before, I think Ventura is the type of manager that can make an inconsistent player become consistent. I think he did an incredible job last year. I'm in love with Robin Ventura, if you couldn't tell. So I think if that top half of that rotation can continue to succeed, I think they'll certainly be a decent team this year, at least.
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest question about me is just if they can produce runs this year. I mean, they had a really great average, they had a really good season last year. With they almost won the Central until they fell apart in the last 2 or 3 weeks, which might have showed their weaknesses. So
yeah, I think Sale wore down, and just that team kind of came apart towards the end of the season. They kind of felt the footsteps behind them, so to say, with the Tigers. So
yeah, so we're gonna go to our predictions. So I'll go first with Chicago. I have them finishing 4th in the division at 73 and 89. I don't like them at all.
Yeah, I think I originally had them about 85 wins, but I actually didn't realize that they only won 85 last year. So I think this is a team that'll take a couple steps back. I have them going 81 and 81. I think they'll definitely succeed playing in a very weak division in the AL Central, but this is a team that certainly probably will not repeat the success that they had last year. A lot of guys are getting older. Really, Sale's the only guy that I can think of that could really get any better as the core of that team. I mean, Peavy, Floyd, Konerko, Dunn, Rios, all those guys, I don't think they're going to get any better. So I think this is a team that'll take a couple steps back, but I think they'll still win 81 games.
All right, so let's talk about my hometown team, the Cleveland Indians, who have
So I'll talk about their offseason. Now they made a few really big moves this season, or this offseason. Their two biggest free agent signings being Nick Swisher and Michael Bourne. Michael Bourne just recently being signed, I believe, last Monday. And then they also did a very big trade, trading away Shin-Soo Choo, Tony Sipp, and Jason Donald in a three-team deal from which they received Trevor Bauer and Drew Stubbs. Now, to go along with that, they also hired a new manager, Terry Francona, who was a former Boston Red Sox manager, two-time World Series champion, also managed Michael Jordan on the Double-A White Sox. Then they made a bunch of other minor signings, such as Mark Reynolds, Scott Kazmir, Jason Giambi, and Brett Myers. And they also traded for Mike Aviles, who I'm sure that was probably Francona wanted him. So this is the team that they're moving on from Grady Sizemore and Travis Hafner, that kind of era of baseball, with those two guys really being the main pieces of that offense. Both of them will not be returning with the team this year. Hafner signed with the Yankees, I believe, and Sizemore is just a free agent still. So, this is a team that's going to look to kind of rebuild themselves by retooling almost, kind of like what the Los Angeles Lakers do very often. They got big names in Nick Swisher and Michael Bourne. They also acquired young guys like Drew Stubbs and Trevor Bauer. Bauer's a guy that was originally a top prospect, kind of has some mechanical issues. Maybe Francona can help him out. I'm not really too sure. I don't know who the pitching coach is there, but this is a team that, for me, I think their problem is going to be their pitching. They don't seem to have too much pitching. Tomlin's okay. I like Masterson. Ubaldo Jimenez he had a very rough year last year, his first year in the AL. Hopefully he can adjust. Bauer, I like Bauer, but, he has mechanical issues. He's also kind of a hothead, so that's really my big concern for them. What about you?
well, with the Indians, I don't like their offseason at all because I feel like this is like a phony team, I guess, because you have a team who last year they finished almost in the bottom of the division. I mean, they finished 68 and 94. And I was really honestly hoping for them to start rebuilding this year, but they decided that they're going to try to be a contender, in a really tough AL. I mean, you got teams like the Angels, you have the Tigers, you have the Yankees. You have all these teams that you're going to have to compete with. And these deals do not help them out immensely. I mean, they're going to be much improved, but it's the pitching. All right, so I'll talk about each one of these moves myself. So Nick Swisher, that's a decent move, I guess. What is it? I think he's making 4 years.
4 years, $48 million, I think.
Yeah, so $12 million a year. I mean, I guess they're just getting this money from getting rid of Travis Hafner. I mean, he had a huge contract and obviously didn't do anything. But Nick Swisher isn't a bad signing. He's pretty consistent, except in the postseason. Then you have the Shin-Soo Choo deal. And, that was a nice deal because Shin-Soo Choo wasn't going to stay after this season anyways. And, I mean, you have a make-or-break prospect. You can either win really big or you can lose on this one. With Trevor Bauer, I mean, he thinks he's like one of the best pitchers in baseball. I mean, I was reading about him. And anything that you tell this guy, he's going to think that he already knew that and he's not going to want to listen to you. And all of his antics that he does, before a game, he plays long toss from like foul pole to foul pole. I'm not sure how good that is for your arm, but I mean, if that's his routine, he can keep that. Obviously, the Diamondback officials didn't like him at all. And I mean, Drew Stubbs, who's been pretty, he hasn't been too good yet. I mean, he still has a little bit of room to improve. Terry Francona signing was very, very good. I like Manny Acta actually, but apparently a lot of the players in the organization, especially Chris Perez, did not like Manny Acta at all. So they got rid of him and get Francona, who I like Francona, even though I don't really think that you like Francona that much, do you?
Well, I'll talk about Francona in a sec, because I actually have something to say about him. But go on.
All right, then you got Michael Bourne, who I did not like at all because you're signing a 30-year-old outfielder who, I mean, all right, I understand that he's really fast and that for the last 3 years he has, I think he's led the league in
since
steals,
2008,
right?
he's led the league in steals.
So, I mean, yeah, you do get a base stealer, but I mean, he's 30 years old. You're paying him $12 million a year, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, and
something like that. Same deal as Swisher, I think. So, I mean, that's a lot of money on these two free agents who they're not even close into the range of a Josh Hamilton. I mean, I don't know about these deals, honestly. I mean, it's gonna improve the outfield so much, but whatever. But I mean, Michael Bourne, that might be wasted money. I don't know, but he's been consistent with his base stealing. Yeah. Mark Reynolds, who's gonna be our DH this year, because actually Nick Swisher is playing first base, Mark Reynolds is going to be our DH. He hits home runs, and when he's not hitting home runs, he's striking out. So whatever. Then you got Casimir, he was good like 5 years ago, but
Fell apart when he went to LA.
yeah. But whether or not he can do anything, well, I'm sure he has like I'm pretty sure he probably has a minor league deal with a spring training invite. But if he makes a starting rotation, good for him. I mean, I think anyone could walk onto the Indians and make the rotation. Jason Giambi, who's like 42 years old and not really sure why. Also, they signed Dice K. If he makes a rotation, good for him. Anything to help out. I mean, the best guys here. Then you got Mike Aviles, and then you got Brett Myers. Who I think Brett Myers is going to be the third starter this year. So,
Yikes.
The biggest problem with this team that I have is that the obviously the pitching. Pitching is terrible. I mean, you have Ubaldo, who was a terrible trade. Man, that was such a bad deal. They got rid of two good prospects, and
who did they get rid of in that deal?
They got rid of Alex White, and they got rid of I can't remember the other guy's name.
Was it Rutledge?
No, it wasn't Rutledge. I think he started last year for the Rockies.
I don't know.
It was another pitching prospect, and I mean they both could be helping out right now. Instead, you got Ubaldo Jimenez, who makes a lot of money a year and constantly goes 12-12 or something like that. So
yeah.
His velocity's been consistently going down, and just like Brian Wilson, they noticed that in him, and then last year he blows out his arm. So and then you got Masterson, Brett Myers, and the last two rotation spots are up for grabs. I hope that they don't start Trevor Bauer this year. He needs to stay in the minor leagues, and he needs to work on his control. His control was awful last year, and he needs to get better on that. But I mean, once he fixes that, Trevor Bauer, he can be a stud. He can be one of the best pitchers in baseball if he can find his control. And I think he will. He's really young. He has a ton of time and whatever. So obviously the Indians are going for win now, and it's really good that they got rid of Sizemore and Hafner. I mean, those guys were good for a few years, but then injuries just took apart their career. I love Grady Sizemore, man, but just couldn't stay healthy. So what about you? You want to talk about Francona?
Yeah, I just have a few things to say. That just kind of I thought of while you were talking, but two corrections. I think Swisher. You mentioned Swisher's getting the same amount as Bourne. I think he's getting $52 million over 4 years, slightly more. I think so. I'm not 100% on that. Also, Jimenez was traded for Alex White, Joe Gardner, Matt McBride, and Drew Pomeranz. Pomeranz being the guy I think you were thinking of.
Yeah.
Playing last year, but yeah. So with Bauer and Francona, I think that's going to be interesting because Bauer is, like you said, he's kind of a hothead. He doesn't really listen to other people. He's not very coachable. And I think that Francona is going to struggle with him because you always hear the stories of the last kind of months or so of Francona in 2011 with guys eating chicken in the clubhouse and drinking beer during games and all that. And the problem with Francona that year was he didn't have Brad Mills. Now when Brad Mills was the bench coach for the Red Sox, he was kind of the disciplinary. He would always make sure guys stayed in line. Francona was more of a friendly, kind of low-key guy. If you ever watch Francona go argue with an umpire, he never gets upset. He just kind of goes out and talks to the guy, never gets in his face, never does any Lou Piniella type stuff. So I think that there could be a problem there. I don't know. Is Mills on the Indian staff this year?
I have no idea.
All right, well, I think Francona is going to need to find a disciplinary because I love Bauer. I think he has great stuff. I think, like you said, he's a make-or-break prospect. He's either going to be really good or really bad. And I think that, obviously, Indians fans and Francona should want him to be really good, of course. So I think that that might be an interesting relationship as we look at going down the road. I also think that, you talked about the Indians having this win-now mentality. I don't know, maybe they think that their farm system's not that good and that if they try to rebuild, it's going to be a 5-year process or something like that. So maybe they decide to go out and sign some of these guys and go after a win-now mentality. But I think it was a mistake. I think they should have tried to restock the farm system, maybe trading Cabrera. And they kind of did that by trading Shin-Soo Choo. Excuse me, I can never say his name right. But yeah, I don't agree with going for the win now mentality. I think this is, and I'll get into this in a sec. I don't think this is a great ball club. I think it's a solid ball club, but I don't think it's going to make a playoff spot in the AL just because the AL is so deep this year with teams that could potentially make the playoffs. So that's all I wanted to say about them. Do you want to move on to the predictions?
Not yet. I wanted to say, oh man, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. Before the offseason, I was hoping that they would start the rebuilding process. And I wanted them to do that by doing some scope and shot moves. So a couple things I wanted them to do was I wanted them to trade as Dribble Cabrera because there's a lot of ball clubs that are looking for a pretty good shortstop. And they didn't move him. I wanted them to move Masterson, and obviously, I mean, they didn't want to move him either. And they probably could have got something decent with Chris Perez, and they decided to keep them all. So, I mean, I was looking forward to them rebuilding this offseason. I was expecting a ton of trades this offseason, and none of them happened. So, I mean, their farm system beyond Francisco Lindor, who, if you move Cabrera, you can bring up Lindor and have him play. Obviously, none of that has happened, so I don't know what they're going to do in the future, but they have a lot of potential this year. They do have a lot of solid guys. You have Kipnis, Chisenhall, Cabrera. You have Mark Reynolds, Nick Swisher, Michael Bourne, Drew Stubb, Michael Brantley, Carlos Santana. I mean, those are all pretty solid players. So if they can all come together and they can actually hit under Francona, and if they can pitch under Francona, that's the biggest question, is going to be the key to the season. So I'll let you go to your prediction first.
Yeah, I agree with you. They should have looked to do some scope and shot moves. And also, Swisher's getting 4 years, $56 million total. All right, so for my prediction, I have this team having the exact same record as the White Sox, 81-81. Solid ball club, but they reminded me of the Red Sox last year, kind of pre-blowing up the team, pre-fire sale or whatever. They were a team with a decent lineup, but they just didn't have any pitching. And I think that's what the Indians are going to be this year. I think they're going to go straight 81-81. I don't see them doing any better, but I think their lineup can carry them to 81 wins.
All right, my prediction for the Indians, I have two predictions, and this is if one thing happens. If they can pitch, I could see them challenging the Tigers for the division crown. I don't think they're going to get it. I think the Tigers can run away. But obviously the Indians do play in a pretty bad division besides the Tigers and maybe the White Sox. So if they pitch, they can possibly go 87-75 and challenge for the wild card spot. But if their pitching is terrible, if there's like an injury, or if Ubaldo goes down, or if no one can produce in the rotation, I have them going 78-84. So I mean, it's just gonna matter about the pitching. I think the offense is solid. I think they can manage enough runs. They have a lot of speed this year too. So I don't know. It's a weird ball club.
Yeah, I agree. It's very one-sided ball club.
All right, so now we're going to be talking about the Royals, and I'll talk about them. So obviously, the biggest move for the Royals this offseason was acquiring James Shields and Wade Davis for that rotation. And in that deal, they got to they traded Jake Odorizzi, Will Myers, and Mike Montgomery. They signed Irvin Santana to help up the rotation, and then they signed Jeremy Guthrie. And that's pretty much the biggest moves for the Royals. So what I think about them is the James Shields trade was, I think it was almost, I don't know. I mean, I feel like they might have been able to get Price. Obviously, Price isn't going to be around for the Rays past this year, I think. And I think that the Rays would have been open to trading David Price, but obviously they wanted to get rid of Shields first. And, the Royals farm system is stocked as hell. So, I mean, they still have a ton more pitching prospects down there. They have some more hitting prospects. Will Myers is going to be a stud.
Yeah.
No question about that. And he's going to help out the Rays a lot. We talked about him last episode. But, they do have a pretty decent offense. I mean, they have they have Moustakas and Butler and a couple more guys. Yeah, Eric Hosmer. So, they have a little bit of power in that lineup, and then they have some pretty decent pitching, I get. I don't know.
Well,
I mean, you have James Shields, and then you have Irvin Santana, and you have Wade Davis. I mean,
Danny Duffy, maybe.
James Shields, he's a pretty good pitcher, but I don't think he's an ace.
Yeah.
David Price is an ace, but James Shields is a designated number 2 guy.
Yep.
So, I'll let you talk about them now.
Yeah, the Royals offseason this year kind of baffled me. They were a team that certainly was looking to be kind of a 2014 type of team with just so much young talent coming through very soon. I remember reading an ESPN article, or ESPN magazine article about 2 years back that just listed off prospect after prospect that was just top prospects that were just from these high draft picks from the past 5-10 years. I mean, this is a team that hasn't had a winning season since 2003, I believe. So, it was a very overstocked farm system. It's still a very good farm system, but I think losing 3 top prospects in Odorizzi, Myers, and Montgomery was very silly for acquiring a guy who's going to be a number 2 pitcher. I agree with you. Shields is not a number 1. He's the innings eater, but he's a number 2. I know he competed for the Cy Young 2 years back, but I don't see him being an ace. I think he needs someone next to him to kind of take the pressure off of him. And I look past that in their rotation. They signed Irvin Santana, and they signed Jeremy Guthrie for 3 years, which is perplexing to me. This is a team that a lot of people think is going to do well this year. They have a progressing lineup, and when I say progressing, I mean they're young guys that are probably going to get better. So this is a team that I think will improve from last year. I think that the James Shields trade will make them win now as opposed to win later. I just think the win later mentality would have been better because I think that they would have a higher ceiling if they had kept Odorizzi and Myers and Montgomery. But I think, acquiring James Shields for guys who weren't MLB ready, aside from maybe Myers, will help them this year at least a little bit. Plus, Moustakas and Osmer and Butler and Kane and a lot of those guys will get a little bit better. So I see this team improving, but I don't see them being a contender in the AL Central. A lot of people are giving them 80-plus wins. I just don't see it with these guys.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, they do have a pretty decent offense, but, I mean, you look at the pitching again, just like the Indians. I don't see a ton of good pitching. I think their pitching is actually better than the Indians because you have Santana, who sometimes was decent, even though he couldn't win any games with that high-powered offense from the Angels. But, I mean, I think that James Shields can do really well this season, and whether or not he can have a potential Cy Young season, I doubt it, but I mean, again, there's a lot of questions about this team, and the win now mentality is retarded in my opinion, because I mean you've constantly done really, 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 really poor, and then all of a sudden you decide, all right, well, I mean, even though we can't win these games, if we get one big pitcher and then we start to deplete our farm system, maybe we'll start to win. I mean, no, it's going to take some time, and I still don't think the offense is ready to really help them win 90 games a season. I don't see it. I don't like the James Shields move at all.
Yeah, I don't think James Shields gives you another 10 wins on your team. He's the only big move they made this offseason. I get that they're a young team that's getting better, but like I've said before, it's all about pitching in Major League Baseball, and it was proven by the Red Sox last year and 2 years ago, and it's going to be proven by the Indians this year, and it's going to be proven by probably the Royals, because this team just doesn't have a lot of pitching, and if you don't have a lot of pitching in Major League Baseball, you're not going to go far, especially when you're going up against the Tigers 19 times a year, and the White Sox 3, 4, 5 with Dunn, Konerko, and Rios. So you're going to go up against a lot of talented hitting teams, especially in the AL. I just don't see this team improving too much over what they did last year.
Yeah, and if you look at it this way, if you have like the Royals versus the Indians, and you have who can pitch better to those lineups. I think the Indians and the Royals are both evenly matched when it comes to pitching against each other.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, but let's move on to our predictions about these teams.
All right, you can go first.
My prediction for the Royals is... where'd it go? 76 and 86. I don't see them getting a winning season this season. I think that if they could have held on to Montgomery and Odorizzi and Will Myers, who would help them out so much in that outfield next year or even this year, they could probably put out a winning season next year. But if they wouldn't have done that, I don't see them. I could see them start to get worse after this year, honestly. So
yeah, I think certainly from my point of view, the two or three guys that I was really high on in that farm system were Montgomery, Odorizzi, and Myers, and dumping them away for James Shields is just not smart in my opinion. So I have them basically right where you have them at 77 and 85, so one win better. Improved a little bit over the 72 and 90 that they were last season. Shields will improve that rotation, and the lineup will get a little bit better. But this is not a good ball club. It's a team that should have just stuck to their 2014, 2015 mentality instead of trying to win in 2013, because it's not going to work.
All right, so we're going to move on to the Twins finally, and I think it's your turn to talk about them.
All right, I'll talk about the Minnesota Twins, who they had a pretty big offseason, in my opinion. They did some very smart moves, at least, I think, from both of our opinions.
Moves.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll talk about the two minor moves that they made first. They signed Kevin Correa and Mike Pelfrey just to kind of shore up that rotation. They lost Liriano last year. And, they're just kind of two glue type of guys that will probably be the fourth and fifth pitchers in that rotation. to go along with, I don't know, Scott Diamond and maybe some other guys. It's not a strong rotation. It's not a strong team, but I want to talk about the two really big moves that they made this offseason, trading 2/3 of their outfield in Ben Revere and Denard Span. So they traded Ben Revere for top prospect Trevor May and former top prospect Vance Worley. And they also traded Denard Span to the Nationals for 2011 first-round pick Alex Meyer. So the Twins, obviously, they're not a team that's going to go out and sign Josh Hamilton or something like that. They're a rebuilding team, but they really, really improved their farm system. It wasn't a farm system. It wasn't a very strong farm system to begin with. They only have a few big-name guys like Miguel Sano, Kyle Gibson, and Byron Buxton. But now that they add Trevor May and Alex Meyer to that, it's a really, I like what these guys did this year. I think they did some, what you would call scope and shot moves, so to say. And they'll certainly be looking to rebuild for the future. It was a very smart, very smart moves by them. They traded away guys that they don't need, that they could get value for. And, they're rebuilding. I mean, they're a rebuilding team. They're not going to win anytime soon, but they really improve their chances of trying to win in the future. What do you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, this season they're gonna have like a top 3 pick in the draft. So, I mean, you're gonna pair another really good prospect next to Byron Buxton and Alex Meyer and Trevor May. I mean, they're gonna look good down the road. I think. Obviously, this season they're not gonna be doing anything. If they have no pitching, they're kind of like the Rockies from last year, except the Rockies didn't make any moves this offseason to help themselves out at all. So, I mean, they still have Joe Mauer, and they should probably get rid of him, I think.
Well, I think he has a no-trade clause. That's the problem.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why he wants to stay there, honestly.
Yeah, well, he's from the area, so maybe it's that. But it's also a question of who's going to take on that contract.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, the Twins, they're going to do a Royals sort of, they're going to try to win later, and hopefully they don't trade their prospects like they did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, again, down the road, they could probably win some games in like 5 or 10 years. Or no, not 5 or 10 years, like maybe like 5 or 8 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not going to be anytime soon. But they need to let these guys develop down in the minor leagues. And, they really don't have much to play for other than to suck it up and get some top draft picks and get some more prospects. So
yeah, they're going to have the number 3 overall pick this year, Colorado being 2 and Houston being 1. Just based off of the worst records from last year. But, I just think the one piece of advice I'd give to the Twins is just be patient. Don't rush these guys. You're banking a lot on the 4 or 5 guys that we've kind of mentioned. So just don't rush them. Let them develop. And this is a team that, they really improved their farm system this year. They kind of have a bit of a youth movement. And, guys like Trevor Plouffe and Scott Diamond looked pretty good last year. So those are guys that weren't regarded as very high prospects, but hopefully can improve on their 2012 seasons. And, this is an interesting team. They're not going to be any good this year, that's for sure. They'll probably, we'll get into our predictions in a sec, but they're not going to win very many games. They're playing in a very good hitting division with 3 or 4 decent teams, not great. I mean, 1 great team and then 3 so-so teams that will probably beat up on the Twins. But I like their offseason. I think they had a good offseason. I think that they're certainly going to be banking on their farm system for the future. And, yeah, that's about all I have to say on them.
Yeah, and they do have a really good manager in Ron Gardenhire. I like him.
Yeah, I like Gardenhire, too. I have his bobblehead right on my window. So.
All right, so our predictions.
All right, I'll go first on this one. I have the Minnesota Twins going a whopping 62 and 100. Like I said, this is a team that turned away probably their 2 best players aside from Mauer in Span and Revere. So they'll certainly regress from last year, in which they won 66 games. And we'll see what they do. Maybe they'll find some more Trevor Plouffes or something, some guys that can be a bit surprising and just give them something. But it's not going to be a very good team this year. Vance Worley should help out that rotation. He's certainly MLB ready. He's been pitching for the last season or so, I believe. So, we'll see where they go, but I see certainly that 62-win team.
They still have Josh Willingham, right?
Oh, yeah, they do have Willingham. He's got 2 years left on his contract, $7 million each year, I believe. He's very good. I like Willingham.
Such a steal.
Yeah, I wish the Red Sox would have gone after him.
My prediction for the Twins is 63 and 99 again. Obviously, not going to win very many games, and they might get the top pick in the next draft and get another Byron Buxton. So.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, I think the Astros have that reserved, but
yeah, they might go 40 next year, 40 and whatever.
We'll get into that in a few weeks, of course.
Yep. All right, so that was episode number 2, AL Central. Next week we have the AL West.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching, guys.
Yep, let us know what you think of the AL Central, if you agree or disagree with what we said, who you think's going to win it, especially the teams that are kind of like the Royals and Indians and White Sox who, could really go either way this year in terms of, they could be 80-win teams, they could be 70-win teams. So let us know what you guys think, and that's pretty much it. So you want to close it out?
We will see you guys next week for the AL West.
All right. Peace.